The Nexarian ship gleamed like a faceted diamond against the velvet backdrop of space, its crystalline surfaces refracting starlight in mesmerizing patterns. Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth diplomatic vessel Horizon watched through the bridge viewport, trying to maintain her diplomatic composure despite her racing heart. This was humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization, and the stakes couldn't be higher. "They're broadcasting again, Captain," Lieutenant Morris reported from his communications station. "Same frequency, but the patterns changed." Chen nodded, her short dark hair catching the soft blue light from the holographic displays. "Keep recording." "Dr. Wells, any progress with the translation matrix?" Dr. Emily Wells, the ship's xenolinguist, hunched over her station, her dark fingers dancing across multiple screens. "The Nexarians communicate through light patterns as much as sound. Their language is crystalline, for lack of a better word. Structured like a lattice, with meaning emerging from the interactions between." She never finished her sentence. A brilliant purple beam lanced out from the Nexarian vessel, striking the Horizon's forward sensor array. Alarms blared across the bridge. "Direct hit." Lieutenant Commander Jackson shouted from tactical. "Shields holding, but that was no communication beam." Chen's training kicked in. "All stations, battle stations. Get me fleet command. And someone tell me what the hell just happened." Wells' voice shook as she spoke. "Captain, I think we insulted them. Our response signals, the crystalline structure of our transmission matched one of their taboo configurations. In their culture, it's equivalent to a declaration of." Another beam struck the ship, this one blood red. The Horizon shuddered. "Multiple contacts dropping out of FTL." Jackson reported. 7 Nexarian vessels. All capital ship class. Chen's mind raced. The Horizon was a diplomatic vessel, armed only with defensive weapons. They were grossly outgunned. But she hadn't spent 15 years in the Space Force to panic at the first sign of trouble. "Plot an escape vector," she ordered. "But first, broadcast on all frequencies. Dr. Wells, help me craft a message they can't misinterpret." As Wells worked, Chen studied the Nexarian ships. Their crystalline construction wasn't just beautiful, it was tactical. Each facet could potentially be a weapon or sensor array. But crystals had weaknesses. They could shatter along fault lines, and they responded poorly to certain frequencies. "Message ready, Captain," Wells announced. "Broadcast it. And Lieutenant Morris, prepare a parallel transmission on their exact frequency, but phase shifted by 180 degrees." The bridge crew looked at her questioningly, but carried out their orders. The apologetic message went out, accompanied by the phase-shifted signal. When they struck the Nexarian ships, the results were immediate. The crystalline vessels trembled, their perfect formations disrupting as the conflicting signals set up resonance patterns in their hull structures. "It's working," Jackson breathed. "Their weapon systems are destabilizing." Chen allowed herself a grim smile. "Now plot that escape vector. Full power to engines." The Horizon surged forward, threading the needle between two disrupted Nexarian vessels. As they pulled away, Chen knew this was just the beginning. They'd survived, but at what cost? Humanity's first contact had turned into humanity's first interstellar conflict. "Send a priority message to Fleet Command," she ordered. Tell them we're going to need the full fleet. And any physicist who knows anything about crystal structures." As the Horizon jumped to FTL, leaving the recovering Nexarian ships behind, Chen couldn't help but wonder if they'd just stumbled into a war they couldn't win. But then she remembered how quickly her crew had adapted, how they'd found a weakness in seemingly superior technology through simple physics. Maybe, just maybe, humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or their ships, but their ability to think creatively under pressure. "Dr. Wells," she called out. "I need everything you've learned about their language and culture. If we're going to survive this, we need to understand them better than they understand themselves. The xenolinguist nodded, already pulling up her data. Around the bridge, the crew settled into their tasks with renewed purpose. They had a long fight ahead of them, but they'd already proven that humanity couldn't be easily dismissed. And someone get me engineering, Chen added. I want to know if we can reproduce that resonance effect on a larger scale. If crystals can shatter, so can their fleet. 3 weeks after the Horizon incident, Admiral James Chen stared at the holographic display showing the growing Nexarian fleet amassing at the edge of human space. He wasn't related to Sarah Chen, the captain who'd survived first contact, but he wished he had her intuition right now. 17 capital ships, General Rodriguez reported, her weathered face illuminated by the tactical display. All larger than anything we have. Their crystal technology gives them capabilities we're still trying to understand. The war room of Europa Station hummed with nervous energy as Earth's top military minds gathered to face humanity's greatest threat. The station's reinforced windows offered a perfect view of Jupiter's ice-covered moon below, a reminder of how far humanity had come, and how far they still had to go. But we understand something fundamental about them now, Dr. Wells interjected. The xenolinguist had been promoted to chief xenological advisor after the Horizon incident. Their entire civilization is built on patterns. Perfect, crystalline patterns. It's not just their ships, it's their thinking. Admiral Chen raised an eyebrow. Explain. Wells brought up a new hologram, showing the intricate lattice structure of a Nexarian ship. They're brilliant, but rigid. Every attack follows precise geometric formations. Every response adheres to predetermined patterns. They're literally incapable of thinking outside their crystalline framework. And that's their weakness, a new voice added. Captain Sarah Chen strode into the war room, still showing signs of her recent battle. Sorry I'm late. Debriefing ran long. Admiral Chen nodded to her. Captain. Your insights would be valuable here. Sarah moved to the holographic display, manipulating it with practiced ease. The Nexarians expect perfection. Symmetry. When we disrupted their patterns with our phase-shifted signals, we didn't just interfere with their ships, we interfered with their ability to think clearly. That's why they attacked, Wells added. Our accidental taboo pattern wasn't just offensive, it was cognitively painful to them. Like showing an impossible geometry to a human mind. General Rodriguez leaned forward. So how do we use this? We fight like humans, Sarah said simply. Unpredictably. Asymmetrically. Every human culture on Earth developed different fighting styles, different strategies. The Nexarians have one way of fighting, perfect, crystalline, and utterly inflexible. Admiral Chen studied the tactical display thoughtfully. They're expecting us to meet them ship to ship, formation against formation. But that's not how humanity survived its own wars. Exactly, Sarah agreed. We need to show them something they've never seen before. Something their crystalline minds can't process. Dr. Wells' eyes widened. Like how a crystal can shatter if exposed to the right frequency, their minds might lock up if exposed to enough cognitive dissonance. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Then Admiral Chen smiled, a small, grim expression. Captain Chen, I'm putting you in charge of a special task force. Pick your crew, pick your ships. Show us how to fight an enemy that thinks in straight lines. Sir, Rodriguez interjected, the Nexarians outgun us at least 3-1. Their technology is superior in almost every way. Almost, Sarah emphasized. But they've never faced an enemy that embraces chaos. That thrives on improvisation. They've never faced humanity. Over the next hours, plans were drawn up. Traditional fleet formations were discarded in favor of guerrilla tactics adapted for space warfare. Engineers began designing electronic warfare systems based on Dr. Wells' cultural insights. Special Forces teams trained in zero-G combat prepared for boarding actions that would seem insane to the pattern-bound Nexarians. As the meeting wound down, Admiral Chen pulled Sarah aside. "You understand what we're asking you to do? This goes against every convention of space warfare we've developed." Sarah watched Jupiter's clouds swirl through the station window. "The Nexarians think they're superior because they've achieved perfect order. But humanity's strength has always been our ability to create beauty from chaos, to find patterns in randomness, and to break patterns when we need to." The Admiral nodded. "Then show them why they should fear disorder. Show them why humanity survived its own violent history to reach the stars. Show them what happens when you corner a species that turned adaptability into an art form." Sarah's response was interrupted by alarms. The Nexarian fleet had moved. The war had begun. "Time to show them how humans fight," Sarah said, already heading for her ship. Behind her, Europa Station erupted into controlled chaos as humanity prepared to teach an ancient, crystalline civilization why flexibility would always triumph over rigid perfection. The human factor was about to change the rules of interstellar warfare forever. Battle stations. All hands to combat positions. Captain Sarah Chen's voice rang through the corridors of the HMS Stormbreaker, modified stealth frigate that looked more like a collection of geometric impossibilities than a warship. Gone were the clean lines and symmetrical formations that defined traditional space combat. The Stormbreaker, along with its sister ships in the newly formed Chaos Fleet, had been redesigned to appear as random and disorienting as possible. "Status report on the Quantum Scrambler," Sarah demanded, watching as her fleet moved into position around the Nexarian battle group. Lieutenant Morris, who'd followed her from the horizon, checked his readings. "Ready, Captain." Each ship's broadcasting on different frequencies, all of them engineered to create maximum cognitive dissonance in crystalline neural networks. The plan was insane. Which was exactly why Sarah thought it would work. The Nexarian fleet hung in space like a constellation of perfect geometric shapes, their crystalline vessels arranged in a formation so mathematically precise it was almost beautiful. Almost. Remember, Sarah broadcast to her fleet, no patterns. No predictability. Hit them like a Jackson Pollock painting come to life. The human ships moved in ways that defied traditional space combat doctrine. Some spun on their axes while firing, others flew in deliberately erratic patterns. Each vessel broadcasted signals designed by Dr. Wells to clash with the Nexarians' crystalline thought patterns. The enemy's response was immediate, and exactly what they'd predicted. The Nexarian ships attempted to reform into defensive patterns, their movements rigid and predictable. "They're trying to impose order on chaos," Dr. Wells observed from her station. "Their minds literally can't process what we're doing." Sarah nodded. "Launch the resonance torpedoes." The new weapons were another product of human ingenuity, missiles that matched the exact resonant frequency of Nexarian crystal technology, designed not to destroy but to disrupt. They streaked across space in intentionally random trajectories. The Nexarian fleet's perfect formation began to break down. Some ships started moving erratically, their crews presumably struggling to think clearly through the cascade of conflicting signals and patterns. "It's working," Morris reported, excitement creeping into his voice. "Their formations collapsing." But the Nexarians weren't finished. A massive crystalline dreadnought at the center of their fleet began to pulse with energy, its faceted surface gleaming with deadly purpose. "Incoming!" Jackson shouted from tactical. "Energy buildup like nothing we've seen." The dreadnought fired, but instead of a conventional beam, it released a wave of crystalline energy that began to spread through space, attempting to impose order on chaos itself. "They're trying to force a pattern on reality," Dr. Wells gasped. "Their technology can actually alter local spacetime to create perfect geometric." "All ships, execute protocol entropy," Sarah commanded, cutting off the explanation. They'd planned for this, even if they hadn't known exactly what form it would take. The human fleet scattered in carefully calculated random patterns, each ship activating its experimental chaos drive. The drives were dangerous, technically unstable, and exactly what they needed. They didn't fight the Nexarian attempt to impose order, they amplified the chaos instead. Space itself seemed to shudder as order and chaos clashed on a fundamental level. The crystalline wave met the combined effect of dozens of chaos drives, and the result was spectacular. Reality rippled like a stone thrown into a pond, but the ripples followed no pattern, obeyed no mathematics. On the Nexarian ships, the effect was devastating. Their crystalline technology, dependent on perfect order, began to fail. Ships spun out of control, their crews unable to cope with a reality that suddenly refused to follow proper patterns. "Keep pushing," Sarah ordered. "Don't let them regroup." The human fleet pressed their advantage, their apparent randomness masking complex calculations designed to maximize the Nexarians' confusion. It wasn't just a battle of ships anymore, it was a battle between two fundamentally different ways of thinking. Hours later, as the last Nexarian ship retreated in what could only be described as panic, Sarah allowed herself to relax slightly. They'd won this battle, but the war was far from over. "Send word to Admiral Chen," she ordered. Operation Prism Break was a success. "But tell him." She paused, watching the retreating crystalline ships. "Tell him we saw something interesting when their dreadnought tried to impose order on space itself. We might have just discovered something fundamental about the nature of reality." As the adrenaline of battle faded, Sarah couldn't help but smile. Humanity had just proven that their chaos, their adaptability, their very unpredictability wasn't a weakness, it was perhaps the greatest strength any species could possess. "Dr. Wells," she called out. "Start analyzing that crystalline wave technology. I have a feeling understanding how they tried to impose order on chaos might lead us to some very interesting discoveries." The war wasn't over, but humanity had shown the galaxy why you should never underestimate a species that had turned survival against all odds into an art form. The observation deck of Europa Station offered a perfect view of the captured Nexarian vessel. Its crystalline surface, once flawless, now bore the scars of Operation Prism Break. Dr. Emily Wells pressed her hand against the reinforced window, studying the way Jupiter's light refracted through the alien ship's damaged facets. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Sarah Chen's voice came from behind her. "Even damaged, there's something mesmerizing about their technology." Wells turned to face the captain, noting the dark circles under her eyes. None of them had slept much since the battle. "I've made a breakthrough in understanding their language matrix," she said. "It's not just about the patterns, it's about the spaces between them." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Like music?" "Exactly like music. The Nexarians don't just think in patterns, they think in harmonies. What we saw as rigid thinking was actually—" Wells paused, searching for the right words. "It was actually an attempt to create perfect resonance with the universe itself." Admiral Chen joined them at the window, his uniform bearing new medals from their recent victory. "And we disrupted that resonance." "We did more than disrupt it," Wells replied. "Based on the data from their dreadnought's attempt to impose order on spacetime, I think we forced them to confront something they've been trying to deny for millennia, that the universe isn't meant to be perfect." The Admiral's expression hardened. "Can we use this?" Sarah stepped closer to the window. "We already are. Look at the captured ship's crystal structure. It's adapting, becoming less rigid. Our chaos didn't just damage it, it changed it." "Changed it how?" the Admiral asked. Before anyone could answer, alarms blared throughout the station. Lieutenant Morris's voice came over the intercom. "Sir, we're detecting quantum fluctuations from the captured vessel. It's trying to communicate." They rushed to the nearest command center, where a holographic display showed waves of light pulsing from the Nexarian ship. But unlike the perfect patterns of before, these were different, organic, almost fluid. "It's beautiful," Wells whispered. They're speaking in jazz. Sarah looked at her sharply. What? The patterns, they're improvising. Creating new forms of expression that combine their crystalline precision with. Wells laughed suddenly. With human chaos. They're learning from us. Admiral Chen studied the display. Can you respond? Wells was already at a console, her fingers dancing across the controls. Better than that. I think I can show them something that will end this war. She began transmitting a complex series of signals, part mathematics, part music, part pure entropy. The captured Nexarian ship's responses became more dynamic, more alive. What exactly are you showing them? Sarah asked. The beauty of imperfection, Wells replied. Earth's greatest art, music that breaks traditional harmonies, mathematics that embraces uncertainty. I'm showing them that there's strength in chaos, beauty in asymmetry. And you think this will work? Admiral Chen sounded skeptical. Sarah watched the interaction between human signals and crystalline responses. It's already working, sir. Look at how their ship is changing. The captured vessel's crystal structure was indeed transforming, its rigid geometries flowing into more organic patterns while still maintaining their fundamental strength. It was evolution happening before their eyes. Send a message to the Nexarian High Command, Admiral Chen ordered. Show them what their ship is becoming. Show them what cooperation between our species could achieve. Hours passed as they waited for a response. When it came, it wasn't in the form of perfect crystalline patterns, but in a new hybrid language that combined Nexarian precision with human creativity. They're requesting a meeting, Wells announced, her voice thick with emotion. But not just any meeting. They want to learn from us. They say we've shown them a new way of seeing the universe. Sarah smiled. From enemies to students. That's very human of them. Not students, Wells corrected, reading the complex message. Partners. They believe the combination of their order and our chaos might be the key to understanding the universe in ways neither of our species could achieve alone. Admiral Chen straightened his uniform. Well then, let's not keep them waiting. Captain Chen, Dr. Wells, you'll join me in welcoming our new allies. It seems humanity has won more than just a war, we've won an opportunity to grow beyond ourselves. As they prepared for the historic meeting, Sarah caught Wells looking again at the transformed Nexarian ship. Still beautiful? She asked. Wells nodded. More beautiful than before. Like the universe itself, not perfect, but perfectly balanced between order and chaos. The future suddenly seemed brighter than any crystal could shine. 1 year after the first Nexarian Human Peace Summit, the observation deck of the newly constructed Harmony Station was packed with representatives from both species. The station itself was a marvel of combined engineering, crystalline structures flowing seamlessly into organic human designs, creating something entirely new. Captain Sarah Chen, recently promoted to Fleet Commander, stood beside Council Singer Clara, her Nexarian counterpart whose crystalline form now rippled with subtle variations that would have been considered heretical a year ago. They watched as the first joint scientific expedition prepared to depart. The Harmony Project, Sarah mused, watching the experimental vessel power up its hybrid drives. A year ago, I would have said combining our technologies was impossible. Clara's crystalline surface shifted in what Sarah had learned was amusement. A year ago, I would have said imperfection was unacceptable. You humans taught us that rigidity leads to stagnation. The ship they watched was unlike anything either civilization had created before. Its crystal core technology was guided by human intuition, creating a vessel that could literally adapt its structure mid-flight. Dr. Wells had called it quantum jazz, a perfect blend of Nexarian precision and human creativity. The latest data from the chaos pattern experiments is extraordinary, Dr. Wells said, joining them at the window. By combining your crystalline computing with our quantum uncertainty algorithms, we're achieving calculation speeds that neither of our species thought possible. Clara's form brightened, their equivalent of a nod. And the applications extend far beyond computation. The medical implications alone, your human genetic irregularities, which we once saw as flaws, are teaching us how to make our own crystalline forms more adaptable. Sarah watched as the hybrid ship engaged its drives. Space itself seemed to bend around it, not in the rigid patterns of old Nexarian technology, nor in the chaotic bursts of human innovation, but in a beautiful dance between order and entropy. "We're picking up something interesting from the ship sensors," Wells reported, studying her tablet. "The chaos crystal matrix is detecting patterns in spacetime we've never seen before. It's like we're seeing the underlying structure of reality, but not in the way either of our species imagined it. The universe," Clara resonated thoughtfully, "is neither perfect order nor pure chaos. It is the dialogue between the two. Just as our species have found strength in their differences." The ship disappeared in a flash of light that refracted through countless crystalline patterns before fading into quantum uncertainty. The first test of the new hybrid drive was a success. "You know," Sarah said, "there's an old human saying, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I never fully understood it until now." Clara's surface rippled in agreement. "We have a similar concept, though before meeting humans, we applied it only to perfect crystalline structures. Now we understand it applies to everything, even apparent imperfection." Dr. Wells smiled. "That's the real breakthrough, isn't it? Not just the technology, but the understanding. Every flaw is a potential advantage, every difference a possible strength." Around them, humans and Nexarians worked together, their differences complementing rather than conflicting. Engineers debated the best way to incorporate controlled chaos into crystalline matrices. Scientists explored new forms of mathematics that embraced both precision and uncertainty. Diplomats developed new forms of communication that drew from both species' strengths. "The Harmony project is just the beginning," Sarah said, watching as another hybrid ship prepared for launch. "Think of what we could achieve now that we're working together instead of fighting." Clara's crystalline form shifted into a more organic configuration, something that would have been unthinkable a year ago. "Perhaps that is why your species survived to reach the stars, despite your chaotic nature. You understand something we had forgotten: true strength lies not in perfection, but in the ability to adapt, to change, to embrace the unknown." As they stood together watching the fruits of their cooperation, Sarah couldn't help but smile. Humanity had done more than survive their first interstellar conflict, they had shown an ancient, advanced civilization a new way of seeing the universe. Not through imposing order on chaos, but by finding the harmony between them. The future stretched out before them, infinite in its possibilities, perfect in its imperfection. "Ready for what comes next?" Sarah asked. Clara's response came in a harmonic blend of crystalline precision and human spontaneity, "With our species working together. The universe isn't ready for what comes next." And they were right. This was just the beginning.